She vanished somewhere in the vastness of America, but the boyfriend she was traveling with came back alone. The white van rolled across some of the most breathtaking roads in the country, from Utah to Wyoming, from red rock canyons to pine-covered forests, capturing every moment of freedom. On social media, Gabby Petito smiled brightly, like the world belonged to her. But just weeks later, that same van returned to Florida, without Gabby. No one called in a missing person report. No one spoke up right away. And Brian, the boyfriend who had been with her the entire time, offered no explanation. The search didn't begin with a desperate 911 call. It began with silence. The deeper investigators dug, the less they found in terms of evidence, and the more they uncovered in terms of gaps. Was Gabby's final text really from her? Who was actually caught on that security camera? And why was a domestic dispute that police once dismissed suddenly at the center of a national firestorm? In a world where nearly everything is documented, one young woman vanished, leaving behind a mystery no camera could solve. Gabrielle "Gabby" Petito was born in 1999 and raised in Blue Point, a quiet, close-knit town on Long Island, New York. She had a gentle smile, soft blue eyes that lit up whenever she talked about the things she loved: art, nature, and the open road. Gabby wasn't like most girls. She chose to share her world, not through words, but through images. On Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, she documented the van life, a romantic, free-spirited journey across America, through her own unique lens, calm, creative, and full of wonder. In 2021, Gabby and her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, set off on a cross-country trip in a white Ford Transit van they had converted into a tiny home on wheels. They'd known each other since high school. Brian was quiet, reserved, but to Gabby, he was someone she could travel to the ends of the earth with. They weren't just a couple, they were partners, a team, capturing moments in the middle of forests, deserts, and under star-filled skies. But behind the sunlit photos were things no one posted. The exhaustion after weeks on the road, the pressure to keep up with their posting schedule, the small arguments becoming more frequent. Friends described Gabby as deeply sensitive. Brian sometimes distant, cold even. One time she called her mom in tears, but quickly reassured her, "I'm okay, Mom, we're just tired." On August 12th, body cam footage from Moab, Utah police showed Gabby and Brian pulled over after an argument. She was crying, covering her face, trying to explain. Brian stood calm, hands in his pockets. No one was arrested. No charges filed. Just a warning, and the van drove off westward. But one thing lingered in her family's mind ever since. Gabby's smile in that video didn't look like her smile anymore. And then there was something else. Something even her family couldn't explain. A strange text Gabby sent to her mom. One that sent a chill down her spine. August 25th, 2021. The last time Gabby Petito posted a photo on Instagram. She stood in the wild beauty of Grand Teton National Park, hair tied up, a faint smile on her face. The caption read only 2 words: "Happy Halloween." Strange, considering it was still late August. That was the moment her family felt something was off. Gabby always stayed in touch. Texts, FaceTime calls, photos, even about little things, like what kind of sandwich she had for lunch. But after August 27th, all communication stopped. Then, on August 30th, Gabby's mother received a text from her daughter's phone. No service in Yosemite. Just 4 words. Dry, emotionless, no emojis, no warmth. Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mother, felt a chill. "My daughter doesn't write like that," she later told police. "She's wordy, she jokes, she never sounds so cold." And Yosemite, that wasn't even on their route. According to their plan, they were still in Wyoming. While her family spiraled into confusion, on September 1st, the white Ford Transit van pulled into the Laundrie family driveway in Northport, Florida. But Gabby wasn't in it. Only Brian. No missing person report. No explanation. Brian refused to speak to police. Within days, his family hired a lawyer and declined to help with the investigation. Gabby was still missing, and the silence of the one person who could explain everything made it worse. If Gabby was still in the woods, why was her phone at home? And who really sent that last message? On September 11th, 10 days after Brian quietly returned home, Gabby's mother couldn't wait any longer. She called the police. Every instinct in her body was screaming, something has happened. Northport police officially filed a missing person report. But when they knocked on the laundry's door, Brian, the man who'd traveled the country with Gabby, said nothing. Not a word, not a question, not a single offer to help. His family spoke only through their lawyer. They are exercising their right to remain silent. The media exploded. Online, Gabby's followers, especially those in the van life community on TikTok and YouTube, launched their own investigation. Thousands combed through old videos, photos, even Brian's facial expressions. And slowly, fragments of truth began to surface. On August 27th, the day many now believe Gabby may have died, a traveling couple filmed her van parked in the woods of Grand Teton. Something was off. The van door was slightly ajar. No one was inside. In the footage, a hat, one Gabby had worn, was visible on the dashboard. That same afternoon, another witness, Nina Angelo, reported seeing Gabby and Brian in a heated argument at a Tex-Mex restaurant. Brian appeared furious. Gabby was crying, apologizing to the staff. Testimonies, videos, photographs. Piece by piece, they formed a darker picture. Something terrible had happened between them. Just before Gabby vanished. On September 19th, a body was discovered in a remote part of Grand Teton National Park. A young woman. And within moments, everyone knew. It was her. The autopsy confirmed it. Strangulation. She had been killed. Her time of death estimated to align almost exactly with the days Brian drove home in silence. Gabby Petito, a girl who loved nature, who dreamed of exploring the world from the back of a van, was found in the wilderness, in silence. No more smiles. No more messages. Just one question left echoing across the country. Why? Once Gabby Petito's death was confirmed, all eyes turned to Brian Laundrie, the last person known to have been with her. But Brian never showed up. Within days, he disappeared, leaving behind his family, the media, and law enforcement in a widening circle of unanswered questions. His parents said he had gone for a hike in the Carlton Reserve, a vast wilderness area in Florida, and never came back. There were no cameras, no witnesses. The car he drove was later found abandoned, deep in the woods. Police were suddenly on the defensive. Without Brian, there was no testimony, no interview, no chance to ask the questions only he could answer. All they had left was the van. Inside, they found a few personal items, a hard drive, and hundreds of photos, many never seen online. Clips of their journey, snippets of tense conversations, and fleeting moments that, at a glance, seemed peaceful. But most lacked context, lacked sound, lacked enough to tell a full story. Meanwhile, the police report from Moab, where Gabby and Brian had once been pulled over, came under renewed scrutiny. In the body cam footage, Gabby tearfully said she had hit Brian, but she was clearly overwhelmed, sobbing uncontrollably. Brian, by contrast, remained calm, at times even smiling. There were details police missed. Brian had light scratches on his face. Gabby had bruises on her arms, marks consistent with being grabbed. But no one followed up. They were separated for the night, then sent on their way. No charges. No further checks. No psychological follow-up. Now, that decision became a national controversy. If Gabby had been protected that day, would she still be alive? Public anger exploded. The media spotlight widened, and a deeper conversation began. Missing white woman syndrome. Why did Gabby's case spark such intense coverage, while thousands of missing women, especially women of color, are often ignored? Gabby's story became a symbol, loved by many, criticized by others for what it represented. And yet, somewhere in the vast Florida wilderness, Brian was still missing. And the question remained, if he was innocent, why did he run? As news spread that Brian Laundrie had vanished, hope shifted, not toward punishment, but toward answers. But the days dragged on. Weeks passed. No trace. Police combed the Carlton Reserve with drones, search dogs, and divers. But the Florida wilds swallowed everything. Then, on October 20th, 2021, nearly a month later, Brian's partially decomposed remains were found in shallow water. Next to him were 3 items: a backpack, a handgun, and a water-damaged notebook. Brian had died by suicide, a single gunshot to the head. But it was the notebook that took the investigation in a new direction. Using specialized recovery techniques, the FBI restored the writing inside. Brian had left behind a confession. In shaky scribbled handwriting, he claimed Gabby had been badly injured in an accident and that he wanted to end her pain. He called it an act of mercy. He said he couldn't bear to see her suffer. The confession shocked the public, but also raised serious doubts. First, the autopsy showed Gabby died by strangulation, a violent, prolonged act, not consistent with an accident or instant death. There were no wounds matching the idea of her being critically injured. Second, if he truly loved her, why didn't he call for help? Why didn't he try to save her? Instead, he left her body in the woods and drove thousands of miles home. And then, the most disturbing discovery, Brian had used Gabby's phone to send fake messages. Messages like "no service in Yosemite," now believed to be a cover-up, an attempt to delay the timeline, to make it seem like Gabby was still alive. The notebook wasn't a confession of guilt. It read more like an excuse. And for many, it didn't bring peace. It only deepened the heartbreak. Because in the end, Gabby's family faced a cruel truth. The man who killed their daughter would never face justice. No courtroom, no confrontation, no chance to ask why. All that remains are pages of a notebook, hastily written, water-stained, and a lingering feeling that the full truth may never be known. Among the hundreds of unanswered questions, one lingers most painfully. Was Brian telling the truth? He said Gabby was hurt. He said what he did was out of compassion. He said he panicked and didn't know what else to do but walk away. But it's those very claims that don't add up. Gabby had always kept in close contact with home. But after August 27th, she went completely silent. The text messages sent from her phone were oddly phrased, with misspellings. Nothing like how she usually wrote. On August 29th, a hiker named Miranda Baker told the FBI she had picked Brian up while he was hitchhiking in Coulter Bay, Wyoming. He told her he didn't have a girlfriend, that he was hiking alone, but seemed panicked when she mentioned Jackson Hole. Another couple reported seeing Brian walking by himself, not far from where Gabby's body was eventually found. Alone, withdrawn. These witness accounts didn't just contradict Brian's confession, they suggested something darker. He was trying to erase evidence. Right after leaving Wyoming, Brian used Gabby's ATM card to withdraw money. He sent fake texts, like the one about Yosemite, to create the illusion she was still alive. And when he got home, he told no one. Not Gabby's family, not the police. So the question became, if this was just a tragic accident, why all the lies? Why the cover-up? Why try to spin a merciful act while withdrawing her money, sending false texts, and leaving her body behind in the woods? It led many to reconsider. Maybe Brian wasn't just a suspect. Maybe he was a manipulator, someone crafting a sorrowful narrative to cover up something far more sinister. And this theory grew stronger when people from his past began speaking out, describing Brian as controlling, emotionally manipulative, and at times violently jealous. If any of that was true, then the notebook confession wasn't an apology. It was a final script, carefully written by someone who knew he would never have to answer a single question. As the evidence began to form a clearer picture that Brian had killed Gabby intentionally, then covered it up, a new question emerged. Did his family know? Were they just bystanders or participants in the silence? Police in Northport confirmed. During the 10 days Brian was back in Florida, the Laundrie family never reported Gabby missing. They didn't call her parents. They didn't file a report. They didn't even ask, "Where is she?" When officers came knocking, they refused to speak, citing advice from their attorney. That was their legal right. But to the public, it looked like silent complicity. One detail especially enraged the public. Brian had driven Gabby's van, her van, back to Florida. He stayed in his family's home, went to the grocery store, rode bikes, even went camping with his parents at Fort DeSoto Park, just days after Gabby was reported missing. People began to ask, who paid for the gas? Who booked the campsite? Who cooked dinner that night, knowing Gabby might never come home? And when Brian vanished, his family didn't report it right away either. They said they thought he was hiking for a few days. But GPS records later showed they returned to the reserve multiple times, as if searching for something or hiding something. The FBI searched the entire Laundrie home. They seized electronics, hard drives, documents. But to this day, no one in Brian's family has been charged with a crime. However, a civil lawsuit filed by Gabby's parents paints a stark accusation that the Laundries knew Gabby was dead, but chose to remain silent, even as her parents suffered, desperately searching. What hurts most isn't just the death. It's the silence. No apology. No expression of sorrow. Only a cold wall of nothing. In movies, the villain always has a reason. But here, the haunting truth is that no reason was ever given. No one stepped forward. No one said, "I was wrong." And that might be the most devastating part for Gabby's family and for the entire country. One of the strangest things about the Gabby Petito case is that, despite all the evidence, the videos, the witness accounts, the confession, it still feels like no one really knows what happened. Brian said it was an accident, but the coroner said she was strangled. Brian's family said they knew nothing, yet they went camping. They hired a lawyer, and they refused to cooperate. Gabby told police she was okay, but she broke down sobbing when they arrived. Police claimed they followed protocol, but the body cam footage told a different story. Layer after layer of information didn't lead to clarity. It led to more confusion, more doubt. One criminologist put it best: the most dangerous thing isn't the absence of clues. It's having too many, and none of them agree. Some began to form alternate theories. Maybe Gabby had been planning to leave Brian. Maybe this wasn't a crime of passion, but the final act in a long pattern of emotional control and psychological abuse. Fans of her YouTube channel began to look back at old footage, the way her eyes flicked around nervously, how her voice cut off mid-sentence, how her body curled inward whenever Brian entered the frame. When you rewatch those clips, knowing she's no longer alive, it feels like you missed a cry for help. The more people watched, the more questions surfaced. How does a young woman in love, planning her wedding, living her dream, end up a nameless body in the woods? What wasn't shown? What was hidden? And the biggest question of all, how many other Gabbys are out there that no one's talking about? As the case of Gabby Petito began to fade from headlines, one truth became unavoidable. Truth alone is no longer enough to bring peace. Gabby's family never got a trial, never got answers, never got to look the man who took their daughter's life in the eyes and ask, why? All they received was a waterlogged notebook, a vague confession, and a wave of silence from lawyers, from police, from the system itself. The public was outraged, but not just for Gabby, for what she represented, for the growing fear that even in a world of GPS, photos, videos, and viral fame, a woman can still vanish, and no one can stop it. So what about those without a following? No videos, no search party, no hashtag. A movement began on TikTok. Where is... But this time, it wasn't just about Gabby. It was about the Black women, the indigenous women, the trans women, who had gone missing and were never mentioned. People started to ask, why did the whole country mourn one white woman while thousands of others vanished unnoticed? What unfolded wasn't just a crisis of justice. It was a crisis of visibility, a reckoning with who gets attention in America and who gets ignored. Looking back, Gabby's case became more than a tragedy. It revealed the powerlessness of legal systems, the indifference of the public until the media starts paying attention, and how easily someone can manipulate, control, and disappear. And worst of all, the realization that even if you speak up, record everything, leave behind proof, you might still be overlooked. Gabby is gone. Brian is gone. Both families shattered. But what's left is a void no one knows how to fill. A space filled with questions, with grief, and with the names we haven't heard yet, but may already be lost. As the forests of Wyoming turn green again, as the news cycle shifts to the next case, and the hashtag Justice for Gabby stops trending by the hour, the story doesn't end. Not for those left behind. Gabby's parents still keep an empty seat at the table, a framed photo by the window, an email that remains unread, the last unfinished message Gabby ever sent. They have no one to forgive, no courtroom to face, no verdict day to bring closure, only absence, endless, steady, quiet, like a whisper that never fades. She was here, and now she's gone. And they're not alone. There are hundreds, thousands of other families whose missing children never made the national news. No hashtags, no viral photos, just aging case files and memories that fracture with time. Gabby Petito, a girl who lived for freedom, loved beauty, and believed in the journey, has become a symbol, not of a solved case, but of something far more unsettling, a warning that sometimes the worst things happen right in front of us, and we don't see them. a glance we ignore, a strange text, a misunderstood video, a bruise no one questions. If someone out there sees themselves in this story, in the fear, in the confusion, in being overlooked, you are not alone, because this story doesn't end. It repeats. Not everyone is Gabby, but anyone could be.